That way, especially for those of you that are watching elsewhere and some of the ones that are going to be wanting to go back and see this, they'll be able to actually go back and see it. I'm also going to reshare the screen to make sure that it is actually sharing properly because Zoom does strange things. All right. So this should be working correctly. So assuming all is going well, we'll go ahead and move forward. So the makecode.adafruit.com, this is actually kind of a full-fledged simulator for this particular board. And you can see in a little bit better detail right now the power port and the green LED next to it is up at the top. So when you plug in the USB, you're actually plugging into what they refer to as essentially the bottom of the board, probably because of the directionality of the writing, but you'll also see that LED, that green LED lit up at the top, right? So what this is able to do is this is able to give you lots and lots of options. There we go, got some of the last couple logging in here. So this will give you a couple different options of things. But if you start trying to poke around and you're looking at these bootloader instructions, here's where a lot of people got really kind of lost, is looking for this C-play boot, trying to figure out what's going on here. You're trying to find it. Well, if you're starting to look through some of the commands and things, you're trying to figure out what if there's a command or an operation or something in here that you can do to actually upload the bootloader. That is a little confusing to try and find in here. In theory, some of those kinds of commands should actually be in here under the circuit playground itself to do updates and things like that to the bootloader. But it actually isn't anywhere in any of these. Similarly, if you were looking here and you were looking for this, this is some code that I'll be working on as you guys are working in breakout rooms today. Even if you have the right board selected, so one of the first things to do, especially for Arduino software, for those of you that have your kits already, is go ahead and open this, and I'll make sure it's actually configured for you. So I want you to follow along here. When you have it opened up, it's pretty light program, so it should boot up pretty quickly. The boards, you want to go under the SAMD boards and select the Playground Express. And then in this case, if you go to try and load up a file and go to the Burn Bootloader feature, it'll very likely give you an error. It's a little harder to actually get it to update in here. So what I'm going to show you guys how to do is really the simple way, the same way that you can drop sketches and other things onto it. So even before going here to the Adafruit site, what we're going to start with is we're going to make sure we have this file downloaded. So a number of people were having trouble opening this. Well, it turns out that's because it's either it's not a file type that you can like open and edit. And the good news is you don't have to. So the starting thing that you're going to look at is you're going to bring up your menu. So this is in downloads, and what you're going to do is you're going to start out by finding where that that download is. So your bootloader. When you plug this in with the USB, what you're going to do is you're going to hit the reset button. You may actually have to reset twice, but the reset button is this little tiny one at the very center, not the A or the B button on either side. It's at the very center. So when you hit that, bang, just kidding, doesn't actually explode. What it does do is you'll see the red LED get triggered and it goes, hey, now all of the LEDs flash green, or in this case, they try and cause the board to disappear because it's trying to chroma key. So what you're going to see is this now has all these green LEDs lit up, and this is going to show up as one of your devices. So it'll show up here as the C-Play boot. So now what you're going to do is you're going to drag that file over to the C-Play boot uploader. So that'll drop it into place. It'll go through its same deal. Red LED, it's programming and writing, comes back up, LEDs flash green, power LED is on. And so now you can go into the actual drive, open up the info text, and what you're looking for is for it to say version 3.1. So this is the new version of the bootloader, and this is how you confirm that this has actually worked correctly. So this is part of the process of trying to get it uploaded, and this makes it actually fairly easy to get the bootloader updated. So I want you guys to go ahead and do that while you're watching, at least those of you that do have the device already. So then we'll talk about some more about how to actually start putting sketches into this. We'll start playing around a little bit in the Adafruit Circuit Playground software that they've developed. There are some struggles when you're trying to get this to work on a Mac. So if you're running 10.14.4 or newer version, you could have some issues there. So any other Windows computer will be easy. And since you guys will be one of the sections that's actually theoretically coming onto campus, if you're running on a Mac now and you can't get it to upload, there's options for later. You might be able to get with a roommate or whatever and say, I need to borrow your computer for like 10 seconds. Don't ask questions, right? It's fine. They will not be sure what you're doing, and you can just tell them, I'm hacking the CIA's, don't worry about it, right? So once this is back to green, then we can actually do cool stuff with it. So this is the environment that you guys are going to be using for today. I'm going to have you guys play around a little bit. There's a couple different things that this can do. One of which is it can do blocks. The other of which is it can show you what the JavaScript is. So if we go over to the blocks, I have a couple examples. I'll go ahead and delete these so that you can see what it looks like. So what you want to do is for some of the simple early stuff, just in terms of trying to get it to work, you can take one of these groups of things and you can say, okay, I want to use the ring. If you want to get really fancy, you can do something like an animation or something like that. So you can start by just saying, okay, I'm going to drop this in, and I want it to show the ring. And what it'll do when it runs is this. Now there's a couple steps mechanically of taking something that you've done in terms of developing a program here. I'm not going to have you guys focus a whole lot on the JavaScript. As you guys are going to do the research on differences between JavaScript and some of the other things for the assignment for this week, you're going to come across some of the differences in the syntax. One of those is this forever, and then it's calling whatever function you're actually going to be executing. So what does that sound like from stuff that we've already worked with in Arduino this last week? What do you guys think that sounds like?
Void loop.
Mm-hmm. It's very similar to our void loop. So that's the reason why I'm not going to try and have you guys programming in multiple languages simultaneously, because that will make absolutely certain that you get very confused on things. So I'm going to have you guys focus today just on kind of playing around with some of the blocks and getting a sense of what you can actually do. There's a whole bunch of tutorials. If you go back to home, you can go back to see a bunch of their different tutorials. These particular guys have kind of a big partnership with Cartoon Network, so things that I know none of you still watch, right? So there's all kinds of different things about necklaces and all kinds of different activities. You can be a 7-year-old Wonder Woman if you want to. I'm not real sure what an energy glove is. Things like that. There's all sorts of different things that you can take a look at and do using these, and they don't they don't go super deep at this stage, right, this instant, into logic and other things, but we'll see some examples of how to do some fun and interesting things on these here shortly. So there's lots and lots of tutorials. They even have like a hot potato game, which is kind of fun, but at the same time, these don't output enough voltages on any of these points to do any kind of meaningful shock. And so it's really not a game of hot potato unless there's some large capacitors discharging, right? So there's that. Don't actually do that. That's a very bad idea. But it is fun and entertaining to think about. So let's go back to this and let's take a look. You can change in the blocks mode. You can change a lot more easily what's actually happening. You can also do what I'm going to have you guys do as kind of practice today. I'm going to unsnap this and have you guys use an input based on a button. You'll also see all kinds of other stuff, whether it's light, whether it's dark, because there's all these different sensors on the board. This is going to start to give you an idea why this is actually your textbook for the class, this circuit, because it has all of these different kinds of sensors. So it can respond to music, and so you can even do things that will respond at the same frequency as music that you're playing on a Bluetooth speaker or something like that, so that it can do the light pulsing and all kinds of stuff like that. It's a little beyond the scope of what we're going to be working on today, but you can see just a quick, simple example of what happens if you add a button push. So we have a couple different buttons. You can also do both buttons pushed together, etc. So we're just going to start with a simple one and say, on pushing button A, this is what we're going to do. Then we can right click this and we can grab another one. And because we've already got a condition for button A, it's going to say, hey, you can't do that. So we're going to set up another one for button B, and you can select which ones you want to be what color on this. So what I'm going to want you guys to do is pick some different colors and see what you can make happen in terms of this. So you can even, I think, just turn several of them off completely. Lots of options on how you can approach it. But what I'm going to want you to do is I'm going to want you to use these button presses in order to trigger some kind of an event. And you can simulate it here, because what you'll see is, looking on the code side, we're doing a show ring, and then for each of the addresses, we're giving it a color. Same thing here if button B is pressed, right? So, and we don't have anything put into the actual loop. We're just saying a condition if we press this button. So we'll go back to the blocks view. So if we press A, what we would see is this lighting up red. And if we change it, then we would see this lighting up purple on the one side and then white on the other. And what you'll see is right now, I haven't loaded that to the board yet. So I still have the same color. It's still trying to chroma key because of the green lighting, right? So what we can do is, especially in this environment, there's two different ways to do it. You can download it and then take that sketch. And that's what you guys were seeing at the top of the downloads list here. So you were taking that Circuit Playground sketch and you drop that onto the bootloader. And what you see after you've downloaded that, it goes, okay, I'm writing. So now I've got the new program. All right, so we have the green power LED. It's a little hard to see because it's trying to chroma key, right? If I hold it this way, it actually looks like what you have on screen. So you can see the green power LED, right? So now what we do is we hit the one button, and we get our red. We do the other button, and we get our two colors, purple and white, right? Pretty cool. So the reality is it's not all that scary to get this set up and working once you've got that in place. So what I'm going to want you guys to do is, especially if you've already got them, what you can also do is, I'll show you what this looks like as well. If you click the gear up at the top and you say, I need to pair the device, you select it on the screen and then you hit connect. And so it's trying to download. So it's paired. And then once you are connected, it'll give you another message saying, hey, we have to connect a second time because of the bootloader mode, etc. So then what you can do is you can just hit this download button. You can see we drop back to where I've just got the power LED. The red LED indicates that we're programmed. And now we're back to the same point. So I don't have to drop the files individually into that drive. I can do it all through the software. So now you are armed with all of the information that you need to start kind of playing around with this, looking at some of the tutorials and seeing what you can do, including if you guys want to see it do a specific thing based on if you want it to play a sound, if you want it to play some kind of a melody or a tone, all of these kinds of things. So it has some audio, it has some input from light sensors and all kinds of things. There's all kinds of loop and logic elements that we can use. There's other stuff that we can do on networks as far as the IR receiver that's on the board. And so you can see this transmit is on this side and receive is on this side. So you could, if you could figure out all of the codes and things easily enough, you could use this as the remote for your TV. Now it would be a little bit of work to do that. It would be a lot of coding, but you actually have the transmitter on board to do that. Same thing with the temperature sensor. This, I believe, is the photo eye. There's also a microphone here that's listening to everything you say. There's a piezoelectric speaker on this side that'll play music, all those sorts of things. So lots and lots of options on how this is handled. So lots of cool stuff that you can do with this. So I'm going to drop you guys into breakout rooms, and then I'm going to have you guys play around with this a little bit, try and play around with some different types of inputs and see what kinds of creative ideas or things you can make the board do, so that you can kind of get familiar with bounding your box. What's the board capable of? What can it do? How can I do cool stuff with it, right? Because everyone wants to turn it into a bright white light for the arc reactor or whatever. Like, I want you guys to play around with it a little bit, and then we're going to start, especially on Thursday, we're going to start getting a little farther into coding, where we're going to put together in the Arduino IDE, we're going to put together the code and kind of walk through that carefully of what it looks like to use this thermometer on the board and actually measure temperatures where you are. So yeah, the good news is that's going to be real easy here in Phoenix, because it's just going to give us back text that reads LOL, right? All right. A few of you got that. A few of you haven't had enough caffeine yet today. It's all right. The good news is you're about to be active, not in the jumping up and doing jumping jack stage, but I'm going to go ahead and open up the breakout rooms, stop the share, and then you guys can actually see what's going on with the Arduinos.